Can I see by a show of hands how many of you have read a Chicken Soup for the Soul book? Wow. Isn't that amazing? Well, the next 3 generations of my children thank you as well as myself. One of the things we did at the end of that first book, we said, if you have a story, send it in. Maybe we'll do a sequel. We had no idea that we would end up doing 101 books, but people like you sent in stories. We started getting 300 to 500 stories a day, and literally out of that grew this series of 101 books. And one of the stories that we received, we put in a 3rd serving of Chicken Soup for the Soul. It was about a mother who takes her daughter to the doctor, very child-friendly doctor, and she's looking down her ear with an otoscope. That's that little conical thing with the light on it. And she says, "Are we going to see Big Bird in there?" And she says, "No." Then they had a tongue depressor in her mouth. Said, "Are we going to see the Cookie Monster in there?" And she said, "No." Then they had a stethoscope on her heart. She was listening to a heartbeat. Said, "Are we going to hear Barney in there?" And she said, "Oh, no. The Lord's in my heart. Barney's on my underpants." And then we did a book called Chicken Soup for the Dental Soul. Can you imagine? All stories that take place in dental offices. And again, a different mother, a different daughter. They go to the dentist. She just lost her first tooth. And the dentist looks at this little 6-year-old and says, "I see you've lost your first tooth." She says, "Uh-huh." "Did you put it under the pillow for the tooth fairy?" She said, "Uh-huh." "Did the tooth fairy come?" She said, "Uh-huh." "Did she leave you any money?" She said, "Uh-huh." "How much?" She said, $2. She said, "Wow, that's a lot of money for a little girl. When I was a kid, the tooth fairy only left like maybe a dime or a quarter." She said, "I know." And she said, "I know something else too." She said, "What's that?" She said, "I know what the tooth fairy looks like." She said, "Get out of here. I've been a dentist for 30 years. I've never seen the tooth fairy. Tell me, what does the tooth fairy look like?" She said, "Just like my mama, only naked." I can tell we've all been there. We know what that is. Now, it was mentioned that this first Chicken Soup for the Soul book was rejected by 144 publishers. We took the book to New York with our agent. All 22 publishers said it's a stupid title. Nobody reads short stories. There's no sex. There's no violence. It'll never work. Our agent gave us the book back. We went to the Anaheim Convention Center. We got some people from Anaheim. Okay, good. I could just mention cities. Chicago. See? I love this group. And what happened was there was the American Booksellers Association convention. There were 4,000 booths representing publishers in America. And for 3 days, we went from booth to booth to booth to booth. Will you publish our book? Will you publish our book? Would you publish our book? Would you publish our book? Would you publish our book? And we got rejected hundreds more times. But late on the 3rd day, a little publisher from Florida said, "Look, we..." All right. Said, "We'll publish your book." And we were ecstatic. We thought, wow, we're going to have our dream finally come true. It had taken over a year to get that book sold. And we said to the publisher, "How many copies do you think you'll sell?" He said, "Oh, we'll be lucky to sell 20,000 copies. We said, "That's not our dream. Our dream is 150,000 copies by Christmas," because this was July when it came out, and 1.5 million, 1.5 million books by the end of the year, so a year and a half. Now, have you ever shared your dream with someone, like when you said, "I'm going to become a party-light consultant," and had someone actually laugh out loud at you? Yeah. Well, our publisher laughed out loud at us. He said, "That's impossible." Well, we did sell 135,000 by Christmas and 1.3 million within a year and a half. And that book went on to sell 8.5 million copies in America and 10 million copies around the world, and spawned a series that we now have called Chicken Soup for the Soul. Thank you. Now, one of the key concepts that I teach is you must reject rejection. See, you're going to get a lot of rejection in your life. You're going to share your idea, your possibility, your products, the opportunity with lots of people, and they're going to say no. And that's just the way it is. But think about this. If I were to ask one of the ladies in the first row here to have lunch with me or dinner with me tonight, and she said no, I know that's hard to believe. I know that's hard to believe. But think about it. If I asked her to have dinner with me, Beck. If I asked her to have dinner with me and she said no, I didn't have anyone to eat dinner with before I asked her. I didn't have anyone to eat dinner with after I asked her. My life didn't get worse. Every time you ask somebody for something, if they say no, your life didn't get worse. It only gets worse if you go inside and tell yourself that it means something about you, that you're not okay, or the company's not okay, or the product isn't okay, or the opportunity isn't okay. And that's all not true. You know that. So the reality is, rejection is a myth. It doesn't really exist anywhere except in your head. Okay? So we have to let it go. I was talking to a company. It was a company that makes eyeglass lenses. They own 50% of the market of eyeglass lenses in the United States. And I was the first outside speaker that ever brought to one of their conferences. And I golfed with some of the people earlier that day. And I asked them, I said, how many of you know who the top salespeople in the company are? And everyone knew. There were 5 people, and they all knew their names. And that night I gave my talk. And I asked, how many of you know who the top 5 people in the company are? And everybody knew. And then I said, how many of you have ever gone up to any of those people and asked them what they do differently than you so that you could achieve at the level they're achieving at? And you know, not one hand in that room went up. Everybody knew who had the information. Everybody knew who had the secret that could help them go to the next level. But they were afraid of that word rejection. Because I asked them, why didn't you ask? They said, well, why would they tell me? And what I found in life is if you ask people to support you, 9 times out of 10 they will. There'll be that one person who says no, but there's always people that will support you. And you are literally living in the midst of a family of people that are some of the most supportive, nurturing, caring, educational, coaching people you're ever going to meet in your life. It's true. And so make sure you constantly ask. Ask people to buy your products. Ask people to come to the home parties. Ask people to get involved in the business. Ask people up line from you to help you, to support you, because they will. And if you ask, you're going to get. You have to be willing to do that.